Right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Planning Committee for April. We have three apologies. Firstly, from Pierre Buck-Phillip, who is being substituted by Marcus Cravis. Evelyn Stacey, who has been unwell recently and isn't in a position to be able to drive today. And also from John Petrinos. Is there any declarations of interest or lobbying of members or unaccompanied site visits which members wish to draw to our attention, please?
Yeah, just an application 6.4 update report. I do actually, the agent has acted on my behalf as an agent on many occasions, and I just want to make sure that that is clear.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Bray?
I'm not sure.
Microphone, Mr. Bray.
I did visit not the site, but I went past the site at Chibit Post and viewed it from the highway.
Okay, thank you. So, we'll move to minutes. So, the minutes of the meeting on the 7th of April, may I take them as true record, please? So proposed, seconded. May I see all those in favour? Thank you. Any matters arising from page 1? Page 2? Page 3? Page 4? Page 5? Or page 6? Right, thank you. Item 4 is any business for urgency. I haven't been advised of any. Item 5 is public speaking, and again we don't have any members of the public or other members in attendance wishing to speak this afternoon. So we'll move straight to item 6, which is development management. Agenda item 6.1, application EXM/26/013. It's a full application. And this was proposed erection of steel frame building at land north of Chibit Post, X-Ford. We held a site visit in respect of this application last Friday morning, and it was attended by the applicant and his agent, by our officers Mr White, Mr Dale, Ms Lizelle and Mr Rose, and also members, myself, Mr Hopley, Mr Gein, Mrs Nicholson, Dr Kelly and Mr Elson. It was an extremely helpful site visit, both for us, I think, and the applicant. And it gave members an opportunity to understand more clearly what was being proposed, and also perhaps what was being discussed that wasn't actually formally in the proposal. And I think in the light of the discussions that we had, there was something of a feeling that it might be appropriate if the application were to be deferred in order for some clarifications to be obtained. The applicant has indeed asked if the application could be deferred, and I will ask the planning officer to comment, but then I will put to the meeting that we formally vote on the deferral.
No, Chairman, absolutely. I think it became clear during the site visit that the application in front of us perhaps wasn't what the applicant intended, and on that basis, Chairman, I think it would be sensible to defer, allow those further discussions to be held.
Mr Skeen?
I propose deferral, Mr Chair.
Seconded. Yeah, I see all those in favour, please. Right, thank you. So that will stand deferred. We won't be quite sure about when that will come back, because of course so much will be in the hands of the applicant and his agent. But as I say, it was actually a very helpful site visit, and an application with a number of interesting points that we do need to consider in some depth, and we look forward to it coming before us again in the near future. Mrs Nicholson.
I don't know whether it is in order to ask a question now, but I'd like to. If it does come before us again, are we likely to have another site visit?
Well, it's a very interesting question. My sense would be that unless membership of the committee changes radically, and unless the application changes very considerably, but that were it to reflect some of the issues that I think that the applicant was raising, we might take the view that we don't need to have another site visit because we have actually witnessed the principal issues on the site. However, it does depend a bit on the nature of the application as it is finally before us, because if there are very significant changes, it might require us to look at how they might fit within the landscape.
Mr. Chairman, I was asking that in perhaps expectation of that answer. Should we not have another site visit? It will be depending, and the committee as it is at that point, which may be different from the one we have now, will be depending on these notes. And while absolutely the salient points have all been captured, I just wonder whether the sense that I and I think one or two other members had at the site visit was that the landscape officer was clear that landscape questions were more than visual.
Yeah.
But that in visual terms, to say that the visual impact of the development will be from the B3223 in fleeting views and passing the site as well as from viewpoints alongside the showground to the south. She did go on to say that she felt that the visual impact was not in any way great. And that rather than saying the landscape farming, going on merely to say the landscape farm includes the impact of the proposal on the character of the surrounding landscape, which is of course perfectly true, but she was very clear that it was almost invisible from anywhere except from the gateway.
Indeed, and I think that is reflected in the notes.
Okay.
I'm just anxious that we don't initiate a debate.
Indeed,
it was a question. I think the note actually is an accurate reflection of what the landscape officer said.
Okay.
But doubtless we will return to those points when we get to hear the application in detail. Right?
Mr. Gray. One question, Chairman. Obviously what struck me is how the parish council had commented on what they thought was going to be there. So therefore, if the revised proposal is in line with what the parish council saw, then presumably they wouldn't need to see it again. Am I correct? We're expecting the proposal to be something inconsistent with what the parish council said?
Chairman, I think the likelihood is if the scheme is amended as we anticipate from that site visit, we'll have to reconsult in any case. So there will be an opportunity for the parish council and others to re-comment on the proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Right, moving on then to 6.2, EXM 26068. Again, for proposed temporary change of use of agricultural land for timber storage and associated wood chipping operations, including a defined operational area, maximum site height of 3.5 metres, and associated temporary works at land adjoining the B3224 at Treeborough Common. Now, not that everybody on this committee will have been, but we have had site visits there in the past to look at exactly this issue, exactly this site. So I hope that those of you that have been on those site visits will be able to bring those issues
This site,
to
but
mind.
not this application.
Chairman, thank you. That's right. I mean, as the Chairman just said, some members will be familiar with the site. It was back in 2022 that members held a site visit at the land. This is a fresh application that's obviously come in since those. There has been further discussions with officers, which has led to this application. Now the site is on inside the red line on the plan in front of us here. It lies right next to B3224 as it passes between Beulah's Chapel and Welland Cross. So Beulah's Chapel's just to the right hand side of that shot in the photograph. Now members have a detailed report in front of them. I don't intend to go through that in any great detail this afternoon, but it does set out all the main planning issues. And you'll see from that report that it's not necessarily a straightforward application in terms of the planning considerations, particularly under the spatial strategy of the local plan. However, there are good reasons in this case why this particular proposal, given its close relationship with the combined heat and power installation, which is also on Treeborough Common. If I show you with the cursor on the plan, you can see, if I wiggle it a little bit, you can see it just at the top right hand corner there. That's where the combined heat and power plant is. It is accessed via this track, which is like a private track of the applicants over the common, so you can pass between the two without going on to the public highway. But the scheme is very closely related to that, and because of its particular merits, officers feel in this case the scheme is acceptable. So just for the presentation now, I will run through the slides showing the detailed proposal so we're clear what it is, and also go through some photographs so we are very familiar with the context of the site, particularly for those members that haven't had the benefit of the site beforehand. That's a more detailed site plan. As I said before, there has been a history of timber storage on this site, which has been subject to enforcement investigations and previous planning applications. That timber storage has generally taken place over a larger area than the application site, and we'll see on an aerial photograph in a minute which gives a clear indication of that. But the proposal before us is to sort of have that much more contained, much more condensed area in the position next to the hedge boundary along the road, which helps to screen and soften the appearance of what has taken place. So that's the aerial photograph. Again, the red line area picking up the defined application site area where the timber storage would be confined to, and you can see on the northern areas here how the sort of timber storage has historically I guess expanded out over the site, which hasn't been great. So it would condense that, and if planning permission is granted, we're also suggesting conditions which would ensure that land is returned back to field and maintained appropriately. And the site does benefit from the existing access from the main road here, which is a good access leading into the site with good visibility, and we'll see some photographs of that in a moment. I've also got some updated comments from the Highway Authority commented later in the application, but I'll get to that in a moment. That's a more detailed site plan. So it shows the timber storage taking place. It's in 2 rows. Which you can see on the plan there. The rows themselves are about 50 metres long, and again we'll see some photographs of that in a minute. The stacks, there are 2 stacks, and they are separated by about 15 metres, and that separation is important because that's where the mobile chipper is brought onto the site. In between the 2 stacks, picks the wood off the stacks, chips it, puts that in a trailer, and then the trailer then are able to go along the track down to the combined heat and power plant where the chips then are stored and dried, ready for use within the plant. Importantly, most of what you see for most of the time on this site is just stacks of timber. The chipping process takes place about 2 times per calendar month. Okay, and again there's a condition suggested which would control that to ensure that chipping doesn't occur there more often. Also, which is different from previous applications, is the applicant is now seeking a temporary 10-year planning permission. The significance of that is that the combined heat and power plant will come to the end of its natural life within 10 years. When that ceases operating, obviously they won't need to store timber on the common anymore because there won't be a requirement for it to be chipped and then transported to the heat and power plant. So essentially the main use that you see on that site when you're passing by, apart from this occasionally you might happen to pass by this chipping, is its timber stacks, okay, and unprocessed timber stored as logs on the site. The other thing to pick up on that plan actually is the public rights of way, which is purple dots. Obviously, so it is, there are rights of way which pass very close by the timber storage. That's some, I guess, elevational details of the stacks. Really, it's shown just to pick up, I guess, between the bottom sections here, the difference, the space between the 2 stacked areas with the chipper in the middle. The applicant does propose a maximum height of 3.5 metres. That's helpful. Again, that can be conditioned, particularly when you bear in mind the height of the road boundary hedge, which you'll see in the photograph in a minute. That far exceeds 3.5 metres, so helping provide that suitable screen. And the proposal includes some fencing around the timber storage. It's a little bit of tension there, I guess, to some extent, because one of the big characteristics of the common itself is its openness. Okay, so we didn't really want to have any sort of hedge banks or hedging around it, because that then would harm the characteristics of the area. The benefit of the post and wire fence is that you can see through that. It doesn't really reduce the open characteristic of the site, but what it does do importantly is sets a nice defined perimeter for the timber storage to stop that incremental creep into the wider area, which has been the concern with the timber stacking in the past. So that's an aerial photograph looking roughly east towards the timber storage. You see the two stacks here. They're roughly about the size of what is proposed within the application. And if you use the plan to the bottom right there, you can see the cursor on the screen. That's roughly where the photograph's taken, looking towards the timber stacks. So those rights of way sort of pass right in front of you there, but that's about the experience you'll have as you're passing by the site. That's a little bit closer. You can see the finger post there for the right of way. Appreciate the proximity. Again, gives a real sense of the openness of the site. Particularly nice day up there taking photographs. Let's move slightly further to the north now, looking back towards the site with the backdrop of trees, which is the boundary to the road. Again, it's working with the contour of the land there rather than digging it in. That's just moving around the timber storage. So again, this is what we see in a day-to-day thing, and they are pretty much 50 metres long. Those timber stacks. That's actually from the right of way itself, because you come into the site with the main road behind you, timber storage on the right. We're slightly further away now, just stepped inside the access into the site, looking towards it. And then that's out from the road. So it just gives a really clear idea of actually, there's a bit of a glimpse as you pass by, but you're seeing timber storage, timber stacks, log stacks. They're not an uncommon sight on Exmoor. And I think most people will pass that by as just a bit of timber storage. And then that's from the road itself, again, just opposite where the junction is. You can see this time of year the hedge is coming into leaf, but actually it's very difficult to make that timber storage behind that. That's picking up the access visibility towards the direction of Welling Cross, and then that's back towards either Chapel and Rally's Cross. Chairman, yes, just to repeat really that the report outlines the main planning issues. It analyses and considers those, and then makes an analysis of the merits of the scheme against local plan policies. The scheme doesn't strictly conform with policy SDS3 of the local plan, but it clearly relates to an existing business development in the open countryside, and in particular at Tree Common. So significantly, the proposal relates to timber storage, which is the principal activity, and that's what you see for the majority of the time, which is not an uncommon site for Exmoor. The application site itself is well suited geographically to this site. It's fundamentally related to the combined heat and power plant, and there are no other suitable locations. We had previously, and the applicant has previously tried to do the timber storage and chipping at the actual combined heat and power plant site. But that did cause significant issues for the residential neighbours which sit closer by. That's why they've moved up here and been operating it here for the last few years, where actually it doesn't cause concern to neighbours. The future landscape officer considered the proposal, and she is content that the scheme now presented with suitable conditions is acceptable and maintains the landscape, which is important. There are also public benefits in the proposal, which include its contribution to the generation of renewable energy within the national park, as well as economic benefits which support the local economy. The report finds, in terms of planning balance, the scheme is acceptable and concludes that planning permission should be granted accordingly. The recommendations, therefore, that planning permission be granted, and that's set out from page 28 of the report. And as an update, Chairman, I have received late comments from the Highway Authority, who, whilst raising no objection, do suggest two conditions. They have suggested two pre-commencement conditions. They won't work as pre-commencement because the development has already been commenced. Okay, but the two conditions: one asks for details of parking and turning area and electric charging points. Officers don't feel that's necessary or reasonable in this case. It's clear that there is sufficient room or land space within the site for vehicles to park that are reasonably associated with the development and turn, such that it wouldn't cause harm to the highway safety. The other condition they suggest is that the bell mouth entrance to the site is for at least 6 metres of its length, properly consolidated, so not loose stone or gravel, and that drainage for that needs to be agreed. Now if I flick back quickly, there is, that's probably not the best one, there is already some tarmac or a hard surface here, but it stops about here, so it's not 6 metres for its full length. So this is, I think, Chairman, the officer recommendation is that we go with the conditions set out in the report, but we also add a condition to say that within 3 months, details for the drainage be agreed, within 3 months of the date of the decision, and then subsequently within 6 months of the date of the decision, the agreed drainage be installed together with a properly consolidated surface for the 6 metre length from the highway. That's it. Thanks, Jim.
Mrs Nicholson.
Just a question. I'm hugely sympathetic to the recommendation and the arguments. I can understand the point of the conditions, but electric charging don't see. I mean, really, it's not a public use place, etc. But my question is around the highway drainage. There is already a highway drainage. Your photographs show that there is already a highway drainage system there. How is anything to be changed by granting this permission that would require anything to be done? You can see your photograph, the previous one shows it. As this, or somewhere or other, one of the photographs shows there's the drain. There's the drain.
The change, Chairman, is that the use obviously hasn't been granted planning permission. So, I mean,
from our point of view, it's a change. From the point of view of the use of the highway and the water going onto the highway and anything that might be different, built.
That's a fair point, Chairman. I mean, what I would say is that at the minute there is the ability, I think, ultimately would be if drainers think looking at some sort of catch drain here, if it were to happen at the back of the site, and then because if you put in a consolidated surface here, that has the potential to increase more runoff, which we would then catch before it goes onto the highway.
But please, sir. You've already said it's hard most of the way back. It only needs a little bit more at the back. What difference is that going to make?
Okay. Whilst Mr Wise is thinking about that, Mr Gray.
Can I add to that point? I mean, we saw the sign there, it's a cross-country course, and I've been there, of course, there's lots of lorries going there now on a regular basis, turn more lorries than will ever go with timber. Those lorries turn there very well, that's all approved on a regular basis. Large lorries carrying horses turn in and out, so to start changing it would only cause problems, I think, because you start digging up material which has been compacted. So I find the highways comment hasn't taken into account its existing use. If you look at the number of lorries going in and out there, it's quite a high number. I've been there, and Point Club events, I've been there, large numbers of lorries going out as it is. So
Mr Wise.
Sorry, just before Mr. Johnson, so just for clarity, is the request from highways is that they go back a little bit further, but because they've gone back a little bit further, they need the extra drainage. Is that what I'm understanding here?
Why?
I mean, Chairman, the reason for the condition would be in the interest of highway safety. Okay, what members are talking about at the minute is actually you don't think that there would be a material change in circumstances in terms of the access, arrangement and movements, that there would be any difference in terms of impact on highway safety. The question then is actually whether the condition is necessary and reasonable. And you may feel as members that you don't. You know, I think as officers with the highway advice, the recommendations, we add the condition, and the members kind of come to an alternative view. You know, you are rationalising why that may well be the case.
Mrs Smith.
Thank you. We have requested advice from highways. They've given us that advice, so surely we should take that into consideration if they are the experts in the highway. I mean, I know we often don't always listen to all the experts. However, you know, I am concerned if we don't do what they're recommending on this, it could impact, because I know there are people here who do know what currently takes place, but not all of us are aware of that. And if we didn't know that horses went up there and someone else didn't know about the other stuff, we would have to rely on the expert, you know, what highways are saying. So I'm kind of wanting to take expert advice from the highways.
Thank you. Mr Kelly.
I suppose what they're asking for is really an interceptor drain to stop material washing onto the highway. And it strikes me as not unreasonable if we accept one of the conditions and not the second one. So I don't think it's determinative, but I think it's probably sensible. So in my experience anyway. Other than that, I'm proposing that we accept the officer recommendation. because I did attend a site meeting in 2022. It was extremely useful, as are site meetings, and the history's been set out very clearly. It does really represent a form of sustainable development in many respects, of course. And it's been operating, let's face it, since the last site inspection, since 2022 in any event, without obvious harm, presumably. So I think given the other material considerations that have been set out as part of the planning balance on page 27, page 28, I would be happy to move approval of the recommendation.
Just to be clear, Dr. Kelly, are you also moving it with the addition of the drainage and consolidation of the entrance surface condition that highways have suggested?
That particular condition, but not the other condition.
Okay. So just that condition,
Yes.
drainage and consolidation of the entrance surface?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Is that seconded?
Can I ask a question of process? Do you, can you seek to amend it before it's seconded, or do you second it and then seek to amend it?
I'm going to have it seconded, and then if somebody wishes to propose an amendment, and they may.
Okay.
Mr. Hopley has seconded it. Oh, well, Mr. Hopley seconded it.
All right.
Did you want to propose an amendment, Mrs. Nicholson?
Yes, I do, and I do want to address the question of advice. Absolutely, we should take advice. Absolutely, it's important to consider it in the light of all the circumstances. It is in our power to accept it, or because we have other information, which some of us may have and bring to this meeting, we do not need to accept it. It is our job to consider whether it's appropriate and needed. Given that there is already highway drainage there, which we can see in the photograph, given that two things. One, no change of actual use, even if it has been unconsented, is taking place. We all know, those of us who use those roads, where the problems of stuff being washed onto the highway, and this is material consideration here, is that is not one of the places where there's a problem. There are places with a problem. That one, from my experience and the experience of anybody else who uses that road, is not a problem. And the third thing is, even if this were, there were a bit of additional use from this consent, which there isn't, it is minimal in comparison with the major use that happens on occasion, and the signing into the sites that is on the road, the brown signs that we've seen, and so on. On that basis, it seems to me that it is not necessary to add this condition, and I believe that it is not helpful either to the applicant or, in fact, for the public benefit to add conditions on that are manifestly not necessary in order to show an advisor that we have listened to their arguments. That doesn't seem to me a proper way for this committee to behave. So the amendment I propose is that we take the opposite recommendation without the highway additional condition recommendation.
Okay, is that amendment seconded by Mr. Bray? We'll now move to discuss the motion as amended. I hope you notice I've been listening very carefully to what you're saying. So,
do we have to vote on whether we accept the amendment?
You will vote on the motion as amended. If the motion as amended fails, then we have the opportunity to go back to the original motion. Right, Mr. Bray.
Sort of follow up, and I agree fully what Fran was saying. When we consult with experts, we need to listen to this. However, I suspect on this occasion they won't be aware of the existing use. The best one in the world, they wouldn't know that. So even I sense they may have made that decision based on incorrect information. So they might be experts, but have they got the information at hand? I don't know if there's any way we can write back and agree with that, or we make a decision ourselves that actually we know it is used. Planning permission was granted, wasn't it? I'm not sure when it was, for the use of horse events. And there are many horse events now, that's how they make their money. So yes, one is, do we need to go back and challenge that point, or do we actually say, no, we don't need to because we have more information than they do? I think the latter is probably.
Do you want to come in now, Mr. White, or are you happy for the minutes to go on?
Only to say really that, I mean, members are considering the advice. You're not ignoring the advice of Highway Authority, you're considering it, rationalising it, you're coming to a view based on circumstances that you realise.
Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Francis. That's a very powerful argument across actually there with regard to highway advice. And as I said, I think as Mr. White's just said, we are considering it. I think what it does do, because I think judging by what was said, this came in quite late, this advice, and I do worry that, you know, with some advice, sometimes it's a one-size-fits-all. And that's, yeah, and I think as a committee we've proved that that's not necessarily the case. And yeah, you wonder how that advice came about on this occasion. So I think I'm tempted at this moment in time to go with the amendment. But I reserve my right to change my mind after listening to the rest of the debate.
Okay, you're definitely not predetermined. Right, is there anybody else who wishes to speak to the motion as amended? Yes, Mr. Bolton.
Just to add to the flavour, I'm sorry I didn't go to the site meeting, but I know the site very well, having my wife was engaged in endurance riding, and I've been to that site on many occasions in all different weathers, and I have never experienced a problem. And there have been, I don't know, upwards of 50 or 60 horse lorries and trailers there.
Mr. White?
Chairman, I was only going to add that, I mean, you know, we can refer to the officer report as well, and there is a whole section on highway safety in there. I mean, that's written without the benefit of highway comments, but, you know, we have conducted a site visit, you know, we looked at the site in detail. I think the bottom two paragraphs, probably of page 24, are the most significant, but it is picking up on Mrs. points more than anything, that actually the access isn't physically unsafe, and that the development would not give an unacceptable rise to highway interest or increase in traffic, such that it is deemed to be okay. And that's why the recommendation is as is.
So the motion as amended is that we accept the officer recommendation but don't add further conditions regarding highways, drainage and consolidation as suggested by the Highway Authority. May I see those in favour of the motion as amended, please? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those against? And that means there are no abstentions, so that amended motion is passed. We now need to make this the substantive motion. So the motion will be as per recommendation without the additional highways recommendation, just to be clear. So would somebody like to propose that, please? Mrs. Nicholson, is that seconded, please? Mr. Gray. May I see all those in favour of the substantive motion? And those against? Okay, so that is also passed. I hope, ladies and gentlemen, you feel satisfied that we've provided by the spirit of standing orders. Right. Okay, good. Well, no, that was a helpful debate, and that is what, as members, we are here to do. So that's great. Thank you very much. So we move on to application 6.3 EXM/26/016/LBC, and this is an application under Regulation 3 of the Town and County Planning General Regulations for listed building consent for the proposed replacement of an existing publicly accessible defibrillator here at Exmoor House. Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this application was brought before the committee in accordance with the authority's scheme of delegation. As the National Park Authority is both the applicant in this case and the determining authority. So here is a site plan alongside the proposed east elevation of the building, which shows both the current and proposed locations for the new publicly accessible defibrillator. That can be seen just here on the plan. So here is a photograph on the left showing the existing defibrillator, and on the right an extract from the specification of the proposed new defibrillator. So the key considerations in this case relate to the impact of the proposal on the special architectural and historic interest of the listed building, as set out within the report. Officers are satisfied that the proposed works would not conflict with the development plan and would result in no harm to the grade 2 listed building. particularly when compared to the current position of the existing defibrillator. Whilst the new unit would be larger than the existing, its physical impact in terms of how it is affixed to the external wall is considered to be neutral. In any case, officers consider it appropriate to impose a condition requiring that the defibrillator is fixed only within the mortar joints between the stonework in order to protect the character and historic interest of the building. This reflects the condition that was originally imposed when consent was granted for the existing defibrillator back in 2024. Therefore, subject to the recommended conditions, officers conclude that listed building consent should be granted in this case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rose. Mr. Olsen.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take this opportunity to say, first of all, I have, as some of us have, I expect, had the opportunity, if you can call it that, to access a public defibrillator in Barnstaple. And one aspect about that was that I had to remember where the defibrillator was, and of course the fact that they are quite visually impactful is actually a really important part of the design, because even though you kind of know subconsciously or passively where they tend to be when you've got to make a split decision. So that's why it looks how it does. And it's a really valuable public service to have one installed, and therefore I'd like to propose that we accept that as a recommendation.
Thank you. Just a second, please. Is there any further debate?
Can I just ask a question? Why is it not on the fire station, police station, rather than on the listed building? Is there some reason why it's not just across the road?
I suspect it's
I mean, who is responsible for placing it there? Is it us?
Well, we are the applicants, aren't we?
So it's our defibrillator.
We're responsible for putting it there. I mean, in terms of long-term ownership, I mean, the current one there is ours. We're responsible there. I'm assuming that this one will equally be maintained, managed by the National Park Authority.
Mrs. Nicholson?
Just a question. It's 45 millimetres deeper than the old one. 45 millimetres is 2 inches. Does it stick out further than the chimney breast, or is it still behind the chimney breast?
The reality is, Chairman, we don't actually know. I mean, it's, you know, it's,
I mean, how big is the chimney that's sticking out from that wall? I mean, it seems to be that there's, that if it sticks out, it's a good thing. We ought to be doing it, but it's fractionally less protected if it's sticking out beyond the chimney. And it would be a bit.
Well, I mean, it's 45 millimetres
more, that's 2 inches.
More. Well, it's 4.5 centimetres, so yes.
Yeah.
Shall we have a site visit?
Why not?
Shall we adjourn for site visit? I think it's of minimal impact. I take the point, Mrs. Nicholson, but they are what they are. And so I don't know that they make heritage defibrillators. So we, I think, have to accept the object as it is. Mr. Holton.
Judging by the depth of the shadow of the chimney breast and the depth of shadow on the existing defibrillator, I would say that it was
Much deeper.
yeah, the chimney breast is much deeper than
Well, we'll have a look when we go out. Mr. Cravis, you all right?
Yeah, we were going down a rabbit hole about defibrillators. I just was amazed, surprised, I think surprised, because I appreciate its listed building consent, etc. But when I read the papers yesterday, I somehow missed that actually we're replacing one that's already there. And it's just, you know, there's a lot of time and effort gone into putting a planning application to replace a defibrillator with another defibrillator that's 2 inches deeper and maybe a different shape and maybe locked or unlocked. And let's hope it's unlocked, because I do think that's a problem when they're locked. So yeah, I'm going with. I will be voting in favour of this, so I won't be changing my mind.
With a happy heart.
With a happy heart. I did have great fun on Copilot coming up with reasons to refuse this. And yeah, it was quite interesting, but I disagree with Copilot.
Right. Are there any other comments, ladies and gentlemen? If not, it's been proposed and seconded. May I see all those in favour, please? That is an con. Thank you very much. And the final item on development control is 6.4, 626.5003, an update report on the proposed conversion of the church at Roadwater. Mr. Rose?
Thank you, Chair. So this application was brought before committee previously on the 7th of April, where members resolved to grant planning permission in accordance with the officer's recommendation, subject to Section 106 agreement, securing the property as an affordable dwelling for local persons in proven housing need, together with the imposition of appropriate conditions. Since that meeting, the applicant's agent has submitted amended plans to correct a minor error on the existing and proposed elevation drawings, where an additional window is incorrectly shown on the northwest elevation. Officers are satisfied that these amendments do not introduce any changes to the proposed development as originally assessed. The scheme continues to propose no external alterations to the building, and therefore all material considerations, the planning balance and the officer's recommendation remain as set out within the original officer's report. The only consequential change arising from that correction relates to condition 2, which concerns the approved plans, which will of course need updating to reflect the revised drawing numbers. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes, opposed.
Thank you. Well, I don't know that we have to do anything other than just regard ourselves as updated and do it. I don't think we're actually asked to do anything, but you propose that we've noted it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm sure we're all happy to exceed it. It does look rather as though there's a giant defibrillator that's been stuck. Right, well that was an interesting one. Mrs. Smith.
Thank you. I don't recall, but was that presented to us and none of us noted? Which is a bit of a worry, isn't it?
Trying to make it feel bad.
I think we're all drawing a swift line under it. Right, anything else on this one? Otherwise I take it we're all in favour of receiving that update.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So, item 7 is application decisions delegated to the Chief Executive, and these are item 7, so we will do as usual and go through these page by page. So please shout if there's anything of interest that you wish to alight upon. Page 1. Oh, Mr. Olsen.
Yes, only because we recently were discussing the certificate of lawfulness. And you've got 2 on this list, I think. One granted, one refused. So just I thought it'd be interesting to see the difference. Particularly because I can see the difference between something proving that something's been continuously inhabited, compared to, in this case, the first one, that something has been converted into a habitable living space, if you see what I mean. So I'm just wondering if Ms. White would like to comment on why one was acceptable and the other wasn't in the light of the training.
I think page 2 is where we start on that. Was there anything
Is
else
that
on
page 2?
page 1?
I beg your pardon, I'm so sorry. Yes,
Anybody wants to?
There's more curiosity on the Rock House Hotel one. Is that withdrawn because they've removed it?
Yes, Chairman, that's all is now gone.
Yeah. Right, so moving on to page 2 then, we've got this issue about the certificate of lawfulness.
Chairman, yeah, that's also the second one down on page 2, and that's it was granted simply because the evidence was there to show they were that they'd used it as they set out in their application, so we were able to grant a certificate accordingly.
Anything else on page 2? Page 3. Yes.
Thank you, Joe. It's more with regard to the two at the bottom, with regard to the reinstatement works following the fire. And I just wondered, if we, just for information, if it's reinstatement works, are they replacing what was already there, or is it slightly different?
In general, it's largely restating what was there, putting it back as it was.
So what my question was that if they just leave back how it was, what's the permission for?
That's a fair point, isn't it? I mean, that's quite often we get faced with people's properties burned down and then need planning permission to rebuild them. It's development, it gets caught and it's works to the listed building. So, you know, we're obviously very sympathetic to the fact that it's been fire damaged, but it is a process that they need to go through and have been through.
Thank you. Well, we all look forward to them reopening.
One at the top of the third page is quite interesting, isn't it? Where a bungalow suddenly was sheathed in scaffolding and plastic for several months and emerged as a different building.
I think it was the same building.
Well, it's interesting as much as the planning history here is a recent approval for an extension to the bungalow, which they were seemingly implementing. And unbeknownst to us, through implementing that planning permission, they discovered that the existing bungalow wasn't structurally sound, so they took it down and started rebuilding it, but they didn't have the benefit of planning permission doing that. And that's why this application came about. But it was to rebuild the bungalow as it was, but with the approved extension, so they're almost relying on that planning history to get to where they got to.
So there's no marketing on it, really.
Rather interestingly, because obviously of where it was very much in the public view, even obscured by the plastic sheeting. But it was a good example, I think, of the local community acting as enforcement agents to make sure that what was done was properly permissioned. And, you know, we do often get challenged, don't we, about, well, how are you going to enforce this? Well, actually, a lot of the enforcement that we rely on right the way across the park is in local communities and parish councils, actually, in a public-spirited sort of way, bringing those items to our attention. Mrs. Nicholson's looking as though she might challenge that.
Well, I absolutely take the general point, but as told to me, I do take the general point, absolutely, but as told to me, the neighbours saw the scaffolding and the sheeting, assumed that they were about to build a double height house and not replace what they'd had to take down. And that was it. They wouldn't, frankly, I think, give a toss about the permission status if they had realised that the bungalow was being put back with the extension that they'd been permitted, as it was before. So I'm not sure that it's actually quite fair to say, oh, it was such a good thing they're enforcing, so they're making sure the permissions are right. No, they weren't. They were just worried about someone putting a second story on.
Well, I'm in possibly more parliamentary language than might have been recorded still. Just making the point that, generally speaking, the community does act as the first eyes and ears for this authority to make sure that planning is implemented as it should be. So we often get challenged, how are you going to enforce this? Well, actually, in many instances, it is responsible local citizens who make sure that plans are carried out as they should be. And aren't we pleased that this one has been carried out as it should have been? So that's great. Anything else on page 3?
Well, the other thing I would say, sorry,
Yes,
Chair,
Dr. Kelly.
to answer Francis's point, the government actually said in a circular that the parish and town councils are the ears and eyes of the planning system. So they gave some sort of formal acknowledgement to that role.
The parish council, it was the neighbours wanting to have a dispute.
I understand.
Right, if there's nothing else on page 3, page 4. Oh, sorry.
No, on page 4.
Page 4,
Yeah.
yes.
The first one from Lord Harry.
That was a proposal for an agricultural workers dwelling, essentially, but the business case behind it was fairly scant. We didn't feel it justified any dwelling in the open countryside, so it ended up being refused. There's also some focused issues with regard to access to it. But the principal issue is we just weren't satisfied that the business or any business there justified someone living on site.
Not to be no cultural need.
Okay.
Anything else on page 4? Page. Are you on?
So this was the other typical law from
Oh,
something.
yes,
Someone
yes, yes, typical.
pick up on. Dominic, this is your typical business?
Yeah. So, again, I suppose it's this interesting idea about how you know, in one case, you know, you prove continuous occupation, or the contrary is somebody proves that something has not been continuously occupied. But yeah, without going into details, maybe it was clear.
This one was interesting though. So this property has an agricultural tie in it, but it's an older style agricultural tie, and most agricultural ties talk about working or last working within agriculture. And in this case, the applicant definitely wasn't working in agriculture, and they weren't last working in agriculture either. But the wording of the condition in this case was that they had worked or were working in agriculture. They definitely had. So they weren't able to demonstrate they had been in breach of the occupancy condition. They were actually complying with it. So they weren't in breach of the justified law firm certificate. So we refused it because actually the evidence says no, you're actually in compliance.
So that's an interesting one. Yes. So they didn't actually need the certificate of lawfulness unless they wanted it not to have the tie.
I think they would like it not to be encumbered with the condition, hence the application, but actually they're not in a position where they can demonstrate they've been in breach of it because they satisfied the requirement.
So actually, if somebody had been unconnected with agriculture and occupied it, they might have been able to have got the certificate of lawfulness. But because they had been connected with agriculture at some stage in the past, they still satisfied the condition, so it couldn't be lawful. It's an education unit belonging to this committee. Dr. Kelly.
Just wonder whether they are looking to submit an application to remove the tiles.
We haven't had those discussions. I mean, there is a local plan policy which says if you wish to remove an agricultural occupancy condition, you look at the evidence, but it would go to locally affordable, and I don't think that would probably satisfy their needs or wants.
Right. And on the next page, the last one's quite interesting, I think, as well.
Yeah, the last one, Chairman. So the actual application was withdrawn because we did have concerns with regard to siting from Gnostic's point of view. It is a site, it wasn't too far away from where we were last Friday. It's a site that's certainly visible from Winsford Hill. But we have had discussions on site with the applicant and the landscape officer, and we think there's a better site. So the revised application is now in front of us, and it's going through a proper process, and we'll see where that ends up. But it is certainly a better site, still visible from Winsford Hill, but it has a better grouping with other buildings, and benefits more from hedge boundaries, which certainly helps set it in.
Okay. So if there's nothing else then on those delegated decisions, site visits, should they be needed, will be on the morning of Friday the 29th of May. Are they likely to be needed? Don't know. Right. Well, possibly not, but that will be when the site visits are required, if there are any needed. And can I echo what was said this morning and thank Mr. Olsen very much for his service to this committee as well as to the authority. It's been a pleasure, Dominic. You've been a very lateral thinking member of this committee. You've always been challenging in your comments, but also I've always been impressed by how much you've had a feel for the local requirement and need, so that we work through planning policy to achieve outcomes that are both in accordance with the plan, but also beneficial to the community and to the area, and I think we've appreciated that very much indeed. So thank you for your contribution, and we will miss you.
Thank you very much indeed. I look forward to turning up as a member of the public regularly as your meeting. Thank you.
Right, if there's nothing else then, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bray, late entrant here.
Update on Section 106 agreements. There's nothing, any update on the Wedding Cross? Particularly if I'm talking to good people tonight.
Well, I guess the update is there's a draft is being discussed. It's been backwards and forwards between solicitors. It's with the Highway Authority as well to comment if they're happy with the wording within there. But it's ongoing. I mean, the other update I think which might help as well is remember for the application determination it was also subject to the positive outcome and appropriate assessment, which we need to consult an action on. We have been through that process and that's okay. So that resolves that issue. It literally is now just trying to resolve the Section 106.
So we don't see any problems on this regulatory process, that's right.
Yes, but as I think we've discussed before, there are a number of other people that have to be party to the 106. It's not just the applicant and this authority. For instance, there is a requirement to have a pathway that runs in front of the Moorland Hall, so the Moorland Hall trustees have to be party to the legal agreement, for instance. So it's not absolutely as straightforward as some might be, and perhaps as you might think this one should be, but nevertheless it's making some progress.
Might we remind the Highway Authority that they promised to adopt the previously paid for by the parish council bit of pavement something like 18 years ago, and they have failed to do it because they're a bit busy?
Well, I'm sure those of us that are part of the Highway Authority can do that bit of reminding. Right, if there's nothing else then, ladies and gentlemen, I'll thank you very much. Again, another very interesting meeting, and we will look forward to the deferred item returning to us for consideration at some stage in the future. I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you.